Sunday dawned with a sky the color of blood. The wind carried a biting chill, as if the desert itself knew what was coming. By first light, riders appeared on the ridges. Caleb Voss and his gang. They came like a thunderhead, a dozen strong, guns glinting, horses kicking up a storm of dust. The people of Dry Creek huddled behind doors and shutters, watching through cracks, praying their town would survive the day. Luke Harwood stood in the middle of Main Street, coat drawn tight, Colt hanging easy at his side. He had slept little, but his eyes were steady. Today wasn't about survival. Today was about finishing what began the night his brother was gunned down. The riders thundered into town, their leader at the front. Caleb Voss was bigger than Luke remembered, broad-shouldered, beard thick and wild, eyes dark as coal. He reined in hard, boots hitting the dirt, his men spreading wide down the street like wolves circling prey. "So you're the hero," Voss drawled, voice dripping mockery. "Killed 2 of mine last night. Brave or stupid?" Luke's jaw tightened. "This ends today, Voss, one way or another." The outlaw grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "You think you're the first man to try me? You'll be bones in the sand before the sun's high." The silence that followed was unbearable. Then movement. Fast as lightning, the street erupted in gunfire. Bullets cracked wood, shattered glass, tore shingles off roofs. Townsfolk screamed from their hiding places. Luke dropped to one knee, firing clean and fast. 2 outlaws fell before they cleared their holsters. The rest fanned out, trading shots in a chaos of smoke and dust. And then it was just the 2 of them, Luke and Voss. They circled, boots grinding dirt, each man's gun trained steady. Voss fired first, the bullet grazing Luke's sleeve. Luke returned fire, clipping Voss in the shoulder, spinning him half around. The outlaw roared, fury in his eyes, and charged. The struggle was brutal fists, boots, the clash of men who carried years of hate. Dust coated their faces as they fought in the street, townsfolk watching from every corner. Voss slammed Luke into the dirt. Gun raised high, but Luke rolled, yanked his Colt up, and fired. The shot echoed like thunder. Caleb Voss staggered back, disbelief painted across his face. He collapsed into the dust that had carried his name in whispers for years. Silence followed. For the first time in too long, Dry Creek was free. The people crept from their hiding places, awe and relief mixing in their voices. Some called Luke a savior, others a fool with nothing to lose. But before they could crown him either, Luke turned away. That night, when the town finally quieted, he found Clara standing outside the saloon, barefoot in the cool dirt, her face turned up to the stars. The fight was over, but his chest still, burned not from the battle, but from the words he'd carried for too long. "I thought I came here for revenge," Luke said, his voice rough, almost foreign to him. "But I stayed because of you. You're the first light I've seen in years. If I die tomorrow, I want you to know you're the reason I'm still standing." Clara's eyes filled, her hand reaching for his. For a long moment the desert. Night held them, the silence more powerful than gunfire. "You waited until everyone was asleep," she whispered. "But you finally spoke your heart." And in that quiet, Luke Harwood for the first time in years felt something stronger than vengeance. He felt the beginning of life again. The sun was sinking low when a lone rider appeared on the horizon, a dark silhouette against the endless sweep of desert sky. Dust rose with every hoofbeat, clinging to his coat, his hat pulled low over a face carved from stone. His name was Luke Harwood, though no one in Dry Creek knew it yet. To them, he was just another drifter, another quiet stranger passing through a town too tired to care. Dry Creek was a place half forgotten by the world. One crooked street, a weather-beaten saloon, a jail with more dust than law, and a handful of townsfolk who carried the weary look of people who'd seen too much and expected worse tomorrow. The sheriff wore a badge that didn't shine anymore, and the church bell hadn't rung in years. Folks had learned to live with fear. It was easier that way. Luke tied his horse at the hitching post outside the saloon and pushed through the batwing doors. Conversation dulled as he entered, as it always did when strangers walked in. His boots thudded heavy on the wooden floor, spurs jingling faintly. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just ordered a whiskey, paid in coin, and took a corner table, where he could watch everyone without being watched too close himself. He didn't play cards for the money. He played for the silence, for the distraction. His face never shifted, even when the dealer cursed under his breath or another man slammed his fist on the table. He kept his voice to himself, his words buried deep, but silence was only the surface. Inside him burned something fierce, something that wouldn't let him rest. Luke hadn't come to Dry Creek by chance. He'd been tracking a name, a face, a memory. Caleb Voss, the outlaw who had shot his brother in cold blood 2 years back during a stagecoach robbery gone bad. Luke had followed whispers across counties, across territories, until the trail led him here. Rumor said Voss had holed up in the hills near Dry Creek, running with a gang, but had the sheriff cowed and the people terrified. Revenge wasn't a fire Luke had chosen. It was one that had chosen him. On his third night in town, he saw her. Clara Dawson. She moved through the saloon with a grace that didn't belong in a place like Dry Creek, carrying trays of whiskey and beer. Her dress worn but clean, her hair catching what little light the lamps offered. She smiled when she had to, but her eyes told the truth, sad, watchful, resigned. For the first time in months, maybe years, Luke felt his chest tighten with something other than rage. Their eyes met across the smoke-filled room, and the noise of the saloon seemed to fade. For a heartbeat, he wasn't a man chasing blood. He was just a man who'd forgotten how to speak. But he didn't cross the room, didn't say a word. He stayed in his corner, whiskey burning his throat, swallowing down the words that threatened to rise. It wasn't time. Not yet. The desert night fell heavy outside. The town laughed and cursed inside. And Luke Harwood, the stranger no one trusted yet, sat in silence with a heart full of storms. By the time the next sun sank low over Dry Creek, trouble had already found its way into town. Folks felt it before it showed, like a storm rolling across the desert. The air heavy, the dust too still. Then the riders came. 6 of them, mounted on lean horses, their eyes mean, their laughter sharp as broken glass. They rode straight down Main Street as though they owned it, not bothering to slow their mounts. Men pulled wives and children off the road. Shopkeepers ducked inside, and the sheriff stood on the boardwalk stiff as a scarecrow. Everyone in Dry Creek knew these men. They wore the mark of Caleb Voss, the outlaw who ruled the hills like a rattler coiled and ready to strike. The gang tied their horses outside the saloon and swaggered inside. Spurs rattled, chairs scraped, and the atmosphere soured. Luke Harwood sat at his usual corner table, hat brim low, one hand resting near his glass, the other brushing the edge of the Colt at his side. He watched without moving. The leader of the bunch, a scar-faced brute with a voice like gravel, shoved Clara as she passed with a tray. Glasses shattered across the floor. "Move faster, girl," he sneered, grabbing her arm. Luke's jaw clenched. His fingers twitched near his gun, but he didn't draw. Not yet. This wasn't the moment. A shootout here would spill blood across the saloon floor and put Clara in the line of fire. He forced himself to sit still, even as his blood boiled. The outlaws drank, cursed, and bragged loud enough for every man to hear. That's how Luke learned the truth. Caleb Voss was close. camped in the hills north of town, planning to raid the bank come Sunday. The sheriff heard it too, but his hand trembled near his holster, and in the end he said nothing, just like he always did. That night, Dry Creek was quieter than usual. Fear had a way of locking doors and shuttering windows. Luke took to the stable, brushing down his horse by lamplight when Clara appeared. She moved softly, like someone used to slipping away unseen, and leaned against the stall. "You're not like the others," she said after a long silence. Her voice was low, steady, though her eyes darted to the shadows as if afraid someone might be listening. "The way you watch. The way you hold yourself. Who are you really?" Luke looked at her for a long time. He wanted to answer, wanted to tell her about his brother, about the promise he'd made, standing over a shallow grave, about the weight he carried every step since. But those words felt dangerous on his tongue. Words could tie a person to your fate, and he wasn't sure he wanted Clara tied to his. Instead, his reply came quiet, heavy with warning. "Careful, Clara. There's a storm coming, and you don't want to be caught in it." Her lips parted, as though she might ask more, but Luke turned away, the lantern light cutting hard shadows across his face. He had chosen silence again, burying his heart beneath the mission that dragged him forward. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying dust down the street, rattling shutters. Trouble had settled in Dry Creek, and Luke knew it was only the beginning. By Saturday, Dry Creek no longer felt like a town. It felt like a cage. The outlaws roamed the street as if they were kings, their laughter cutting sharp against the silence of shuttered windows. Merchants stayed inside. Mothers pulled children off porches. No one dared cross them. The sheriff locked himself in his office, blinds drawn, badge tucked beneath a bottle of whiskey. Fear had become the law. Luke Harwood had watched long enough. Every day he sat in his corner of the saloon, eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat, and listened. He saw the outlaws take what they pleased. He saw Clara flinch under their hands. Saw her father. The sheriff looked the other way. Each moment tightened the coil inside him, a spring ready to snap. That Saturday evening, as the sun bled red, across the horizon, the outlaws stumbled out of the saloon, drunk and loud, spurs jangling against the boardwalk. Dust rose around them, glowing in the dying light. That was when Luke stood. His boots struck the dirt of Main Street with the kind of finality that drew every eye. The wind carried his coat like a shadow behind him. A hush spread over the town. Even the piano in the saloon went silent. Luke's voice came steady, low, carrying farther than he expected. "You boys tell Voss his day's done. Tomorrow I'm coming for him." At first the gang laughed. Their leader, a wide man with scars down his jaw, spat into the dirt. "Who the hell are you to call out Caleb Voss?" Luke didn't answer. He didn't need to. His hand rested on the worn grip of his Colt. The air tightened like a drawn bow. The outlaw twitched for his gun, just enough. That was all Luke needed. The street cracked with thunder. Luke's revolver spoke twice, quicker than a blink. Two men crumpled into the dust, their guns unfired, eyes wide with the shock of dying fast. The others froze. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then panic tore through them like a stampede. The surviving outlaws scrambled to their horses, spitting curses, spurs flashing as they fled into the night. Dry Creek stood stunned. A stranger had done in a breath what the sheriff hadn't dared attempt in years. Whispers rippled through the gathering crowd. "Savior, madman." Both Clara pushed through them, her face pale. She grabbed Luke's arm, whispering fiercely, "You'll be killed. You don't know what Caleb Voss will bring down on you." Luke looked at her, calm but unyielding. Maybe, he said. But I won't run, not again. There was weight in those words, something personal, something tied to the ghosts he carried. Clara wanted to ask, but his eyes hard as flint warned her off. That night, Luke rode out beyond the last lanterns of town and built a small fire under the stars. The desert stretched silent around him, coyotes howling at the edge of hearing. He sharpened his knife, oiled his gun, and sat staring into the flames. The people of Dry Creek slept uneasily, some with hope for the first time in years, others with dread of vengeance sure to come. But Luke Harwood, the stranger with storms in his chest, felt only the weight of words he'd never spoken.